the push for women's suffrage is going to occur in the Gilded Age, and then it's going to come to completion towards the end of the progressive era. I'd say completion, but part of the problem of the early suffrage movement is that it's often going to be very segregated. And we're going to see that even with the completion of the women's suffrage movement with the 19th Amendment, that's only going to be really for white women, because of rules like Jim Crow are going to prevent black women from being able to vote. Anyways, the women's suffrage movement actually starts all the way back with the Seneca Falls Convention, and the same leaders that participated in that Seneca Falls Convention are going to help form the first national organization for women's suffrage, called the National Women's Suffrage Organization. It's Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Now, what's interesting to me is that they're not just fighting for women's suffrage, they're also trying to promote women getting higher wages and making it easier for women to seek and be granted a divorce. In other words, what they're trying to do is decouple marriage from the patriarchy, the male domination, right? If women can have wages and if they can get an easier divorce, then the men and the women have to be co-partners in the marriage and not just have one dominated by the other. Anyways, in 1890, the NWSA is going to merge with another organization and form NAWSA, the National Association for Women's Suffrage. And in 1890, we also see that Wyoming is going to be the first territory or state, when it becomes a state, to give women the full suffrage, right? Full voting rights. And this is going to be a trend. We're going to see that Western states were the ones that tended to give full voting rights first, right? Woo, where is it? There it is. Nope, wrong one. There it is. All right, so the green area are the places where women had voting rights, and the orange area is the area that women did not have full voting rights. And you can see that part of that is because when they moved out west, they had to be equals. Now, there's a good argument for women at the time. The argument was simply, this is social justice. Women made up half of the population. They should be able to have voting rights as well. There was also a second argument that said women were just morally superior to men. And if you give women the right to vote, they will be the ones that promote social welfare programs, which was a big deal during the progressive era. Remember the Settlement House movement. One of the big early movements that they were supposed to be supporting was the temperance movement. We could see the Women's Christian Temperance Union was one of the biggest organizations at the time, and this was a women's issue to them. Temperance means to limit the amount of drinking alcohol. They assumed that by lowering the alcohol use that it would lower domestic violence and it would lower crime and poverty rates, which would help women. Again, becomes a moral issue as well as a social justice issue. Kind of ties back into what Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton were fighting for there. But please remember, these early movements were often segregated, and the black women had to go off and fight with their own organization because they weren't always welcomed in things like the NWSA.